First question comes from Yutaka. Yutaka is actually a guy that I didn't meet officially, but when I was in high school, he was one of the first dancers that I actually saw. There was like a club's day, and it was him and a few other people, and they were breaking on like a carpet in the gym or something like that. There was like a little mini stage that was made. And I was blown away. He was doing these like head bridges, kind of like Shaolin inspired, whatever kind of things. But when I, my age, seeing that stuff for the first time, or kind of really seeing it then, yeah, seeing it live in person was really cool. And yeah, he was one of the guys. He has a bunch of really good questions, so I'm gonna try and answer these as best I can. The first one is, what's the importance of practicing footwork specifically for beginners? And I think that's a pretty straightforward answer that, footwork is kind of the thing that really sets this dance apart from other dances. Like Ken Swift said it best, that like that's the essence. That's the thing that really makes it unique. Like, you see, and you see elements of these things like lofting and house and whatever, but the way that it's done in breaking is just like, that's the essence to a lot of people. So if you don't have that, you're kind of missing a huge part of what makes breaking. Like, a lot of dances are stand-up dances, and that's fine, but not a lot of them hit the floor in the way that breaking does. You get a little bit with lofting, a little bit with, like, say, contemporary, but they're completely different. And breaking's like meat and potatoes, is on the floor, on the ground, on your hands, on your feet, doing footwork. That doesn't mean that you have to do only footwork, but it is something that you should learn, and it is an important aspect of the dance. So that's a really good question for beginners to kind of wrestle with. Next is, how do you think hip-hop culture today is affecting breaking? And that one's like, I feel like that one's kind of hard to answer, because every scene has its own different influences. Like, coming from Vancouver, our hip-hop scene is not really connected with the dance scene so much. It is and it isn't. But say somewhere like Toronto is, from what I understand and the friends that I know there, it's way more connected. So there's people dabble in a lot of different things. There's b-boys and b-girls who are artists or poets or graffiti writers or DJs or whatever. And there's a lot of like people in all the different areas of hip-hop. And people go to shows, and MCs will come to a battle or whatever, stuff like that. So there's a lot of like overlap there. And so there's a lot of influence on the breaking scene in Toronto, but in Vancouver it's a little different. But I would say in general, like over the years, well, I mean, if you take breaking as a part of hip-hop, then it really borrows a lot. I think this is one thing that Vancouver does really well, is it borrows that spirit of, peace, love, unity, and having fun. And that's, to me, that's like a major, that's what I learned as the pillars of hip-hop. And if you don't have that, then it's not hip-hop. And the way that breaking happens in Vancouver, the way the dance scene in general is, some people see it as really soft, and they can have their opinions, but I really see it as like people just enjoy dance. They just like moving, and they like connecting, and it really has that party atmosphere, which is where breaking, where hip-hop, a lot of it comes from, is that those block parties and jams, real jams, park jams, stuff like that. People just enjoying music, having a good time, dancing, and not always breaking, but just, if the song called for it, they would do it, whatever the song was, right? So that's kind of where I see the influence of, like, some jams will try and really capture that party atmosphere, and it's something that I think is really missing a lot these days. And that, jams in general could balance a lot better. Next question is, where do you see breaking in the next 10 years? This is my personal opinion. I think that I would like to see breaking go explore all the different areas that it can. Because, you know, for example, with the Olympics coming, there's a lot of division, a lot of people are for it or against it. And, you know, I talked about this in the interview with my friend Abe, and we were talking about how to grow a scene. And one of the things that I brought up was, you shouldn't, as a fan of something, as a fan of breaking, you shouldn't want to have some other avenue pushing it forward fail. You should want both things to grow, even if they're separate. And maybe they become separate things, whatever, but like, you should want those things to succeed. And I parallel this with like wrestling. It's like, I watch a lot of wrestling. For people who don't know, for the last 20 years, WWE has been like basically the only major promotion. And then just last year there was a new promotion called AEW, and there's a lot of people picking sides and stuff like that. But there's a group of people that, and this is what I think too, is that you shouldn't want one or the other to fail. You should want both of them to succeed, so that the whole industry as a whole is healthier and better off. Wrestlers have more options to pick and choose what they want to do. They can negotiate for better contracts because there is competition and stuff like that. So, you know, you shouldn't want the raw essence of breaking to die, or you shouldn't want, like, you know, competitions to die and disappear, because those things, they all help each other in some ways. So, you know, I think a big thing that has to happen in the next 10 years, hopefully, what I hope is people are doing is talking more with each other and trying to look at the big picture rather than their own little personal little pocket of what's going on directly around them. Try to think long term, try to have more vision, try to think of where this could go and how it can grow and different ways that it can grow, stuff like that. Next question is, how relevant is breaking today? And what is keeping it relevant or not? I don't know, that's hard to say. I think it's pretty relevant in the sense that it has like global appeal. You know, every country has people that are interested in it. The problem is, especially in the West, that it has that mainstream like image already, that people already think they know what it is, and so they'll write it off as like, oh, that breakdance, whatever, you're still moonwalking, or can you do a backflip, this kind of thing. And so that's kind of one of the things that's keeping it from like maybe re-emerging or whatever as being more relevant. I think another thing that's preventing it, like, it's always going to be relevant because it's such an amazing dance to watch when you see it. That's why kids like everywhere get into it. That's why probably most of us got into it. It's like you see it and you're like, what the hell is this thing? Like, I can't believe people could move that way, and you want to do it for whatever reason. Like, you know, it's just in us to move, and it's just such an exciting way to approach movement. And the music is like more relevant than, say, something like ballet. And not to take anything away from ballet or whatever, but you know, it's what people are listening to, or at least were. Depends what you think about the state of music these days, and in the breaking scene too. But it's like, that's the music of youth, is hip-hop culture and hip-hop music and that kind of thing. So in that sense, it's always going to be relevant as long as it's still connected with the music, still connected with the culture, youth culture, and what's going on. But yeah, going back to like what's keeping it from being relevant, one other thing, and I touched on this again with my talk with Abe, is that a lot of it is like, we have this, I bring this up a lot, we have this image of dancers as being these, like, if you're a dancer, if you do dance is only for dancers. It's not for everyday people. It's not something that everyday people do, depending on your cultural background. But particularly in like the West, and maybe more so like European influenced Western society, like dance is not, it's something that you do in like a ballroom or something for special occasions or something like that, or, you know, slow dance at a high school whatever thing. But as far as just dancing and like letting go and being free and not caring and losing yourself in this crowd or whatever, and having sort of like almost spiritual experiences in some senses, like, or just like letting go of the ego, that kind of thing, like it's not a thing here. And so it's like, again, it's like public perception of what is dance. And I think, you know, going back to that last question of where do I see breaking in 10 years, like that's kind of one of the things that I hope is this public perception has shifted a little bit more, because maybe we're more conscious of how to present it in a more professional way, in a more understandable way, stuff like that.